Hello. My name is Marcus. Marcus Billows. And I'm here, to tell you my story. Or as much of it as you'll believe. Which honestly isn't much. I swear it's all true. I just don't think anyone in their right mind would buy it. It seems like my life is just one completely messed up circumstance after the next, both bad and good in equal measures. And just when I think everything's going well, something always shows up to drown my world in some measure of darkness. And to be honest, I'm not sure what to make of it myself. Truthfully, it all started back when I was a kid. My father, Samuel Billows, was an exceptionally high-priced attorney. Here in Blackout City, he was the top of the food chain. A defense attorney who could get just about anyone off. He basically had the golden ticket to money, and he used it. He worked for basically the worst people imaginable. A criminal defense attorney for people he knew were criminals, people he knew were guilty. But, as he used to say, it tends to be guilty people who have the most money at their disposal, along with his most important life lesson. The one thing he told me to remember above all else, and that's that no one cares. Compassion is imaginary. Don't bank on it. The truth is, no one really cares about anyone. Worry about yourself and no one else. Do what it takes to win, even if you have to play dirty. Because as long as you win, it doesn't matter how dirty you played, so long as you didn't get caught. My father lived his life by that code of ethics, and he made a lot of money doing it. Right up until the day his luck finally ran out. He was busted for dirty dealing and helping to cover up several murders and countless other criminal infractions, tampering with evidence and any number of other criminal offenses. They gave him so many sentences, he's never gonna see the light of day again. That is, if he's still alive. It's not as if I've bothered checking. After they took him in and he was sentenced, all of his assets were stripped. And that includes any and all assets left to me and my mother. We were kicked out of our own home. Basically, thrown out on the street with nothing. My mom, a woman who, basically had never worked a day in her life, did not take it well. At first, the bottle became her best friend. She'd shack up with anybody who'd pay the bills for her. String of assholes, deadbeats, gangbangers, whoever'd pay the bills, feed her habit, and keep a roof over her head. It didn't really matter, and that held out until she fell in love with a needle, eventually spiraling down to a point where nobody who really had anything wanted anything to do with her, leaving us finally ending up at financial assisted housing, a massive apartment complex filled with the brokest of the broke, gang members around every corner, everything covered in graffiti, bullet holes, and blood, filth as far as the eye could see, and not a pure soul to be found anywhere. My mother would commonly spend everything that she'd earn out on the streets, doing basically whatever it took, on getting more needles, more of that poison to pump into her veins, right up until the night that I found her dead in her room. I had gotten up to check for food. I was fairly hungry, but then again I usually was. I was told that she was going to go grocery shopping, get some food to eat. At that point I was about 17, rounding 18, and looking forward to getting out on my own. After finding that she hadn't gone grocery shopping, I went to check on her in her room. And that's when I found her, the needle still in her arm. At first I thought she was just out cold, until I checked for a pulse and didn't find one. For a while I just stared at her, knowing that that was probably the last time that I'd ever see her, knowing that she spent the food that she was supposed to spend feeding me on the needle that killed her. I eventually called the cops, of course, who of course had some words to say about it to my face, and then some to whisper while they walked away. To my face it was, "Oh, we're sorry, kid. Tough break. The world's a hard place, but we're sure you'll make it." And as they walked away, they just giggled amongst each other, talking about another piece of street trash that killed herself with a needle, and another punk kid who's just gonna end up in a gang, talking about how they'll probably be arresting me in a year or so. After that, it didn't take long for the landlord to give me the boot. He knew my mom had died. I didn't have any money to pay him, and every job I tried to get just slammed the door in my face. I was trying as hard as I could and getting nowhere. But, like my father said, no one cares. He booted me out on my ass, and I ended up on the streets. I got several offers from gangs trying to sway me in, telling me they'll feed me, put clothes on my back. But once I'm in for life. Kill or be killed. Do as I'm told. I turned them all down. No way. I won't. At least that's what I kept telling myself. But after weeks of trying to scrape by living on the streets, trying to collect tin cans and bottles to survive, half-starved, desperate, nowhere to go, no real hope in sight. Finally, I got desperate. It all happened so quick. There I was, just outside of some convenience store. Some nowhere little convenience store, on the wrong side of town. And there, some woman pulled up, driving an overpriced expensive car, wearing clothes that looked like there wasn't a piece on it, that costed less than $1,000, covered in jewelry. She had everything. She didn't need anything. And here I was, starving to death on the streets. Finally, the desperation took hold. As she exited, I ran by her in a flash, snatched the purse off her arm, tore the strap, and then I just ran through back alleys and dirty walkways, ran until I was sure that she couldn't follow, and no one knew where I went. Hell, in this part of town, nobody cared. As I sat there, holding the purse, I felt sick to my stomach. My whole life, and this is what it added up to. A nothing nobody, just a purse snatcher. Is that really all I am? Tears dropped from my eyes onto the purse as I clung to it, slumping down onto the ground, weeping over my loss, the despair, the empty, hollow feeling of holding something that wasn't truly mine in my arms, and knowing it was my only hope, praying that there was something in here worth it. I eventually rummaged through the purse, trying to clear the tears from my eyes. Inside, I found about $500. More than enough to buy me the food that I needed, some clothes to put on, maybe even a night's stay in a hotel. A few, actually. A glimmer of respite, but that's all it would add up to. Other than that, there was just fairly average crap that I couldn't use without getting busted. IDs, makeup, credit cards, and a few crappy lottery tickets. By the looks of it, she just bought them. I'd take everything that I could use, the money and the lottery tickets. Hell, maybe she'll win a few dollars. And then I chunk the rest in a garbage can and go get myself the first meal I've had in a long time. Afterwards, I start walking the streets, heading for a nearby hotel, hoping to get myself a room for the night, an actual bed to sleep in. Warm, heated rooms. How I miss them. As I walked down the street, there was a TV inside of a shop, doing the average broadcast, having the news on display. At the moment, it was lottery time, so of course I stopped to check the tickets to see if there was any money to be had, maybe a few dollars. As they read off the numbers, I checked through the tickets, not really expecting much. That was until they finished reading off all the numbers, and it felt like my heart stopped beating. The ticket in my hand was a complete match, including the Powerball numbers. A jackpot. The lottery was at its highest level that it had been at in years. Over 100 million. And I was holding the winning ticket. A winning ticket that I got from Jack in a purse. What kind of cosmic injustice is this? Part of me was overjoyed, and another part of me was sick to my stomach. After everything, I'm getting rewarded for that, for stealing something that somebody else had. In the moment, I felt even more ashamed of myself. But that didn't stop me from calling in the win. At first, I was worried that maybe the lady had remembered her winning numbers, got a record of buying tickets, might check up. But as I made the call and got directions for a direct meeting, it all went on without a hitch. I was declared the largest scale lottery winner in more than a decade. Over 100 million. They put me on the news and everything. After I got my winnings, I completely lost it. I bought a ritzy hotel room, basically the best you could get in the city. Penthouse suite, overlooking everything. Most of it got stuffed into a bank account, but I had a large sum of it stuffed into a briefcase for me, and went to my private room. There I stared out over the city, a city that I had seen so many times. Most of the time, from the gutter. It all looked so bright and shiny from up here. All city lights, looking like stars dotting the sky. But when you're up close, those stars, well, they're just garbage fires. The city was as corrupt as they get. Nobody cared. Nobody cared about anything. Nobody cared about anyone. Everything was corrupt, and everyone knew it. And still, no one cared enough to do anything about it. No one cared enough to fight back against it. And especially nobody who had any resources to actually do it. And right there and then, I decided that my father was absolutely right. Nobody cares about anyone but themselves. And that's exactly the problem. I won't do it. I'm not gonna be just another pinwheel in this merry-go-round of self-destruction. Those on top spitting on those at the bottom. Those at the bottom clamoring to get to the top. And those in the middle spending their whole lives trying to be one or just not be the other. All the while, no one cares. I decided right then and there that I'd be someone who cares. If I was gonna have money and power, then I was gonna use it. Use it to help someone other than myself. I may have gotten this through dirty means, but that doesn't mean that I have to spend my life doing nothing to change any of this. After that, I went back to school, or technically to GED classes. Got my GED, and it was right off to college, where I began studying to get my degree in engineering. I always had a knack for creativity and design. I liked machinery, mechanics, and the sciences in general. So from that moment on, I worked my butt off, spending every moment that I wasn't studying or getting the best grades that I possibly could, trying to learn everything, including about business, taking the money that I had, starting to make solid investments, create businesses, learning about the stock market, trade industries, industrial works, everything that I possibly could. Eventually, that money started turning itself around. Before long, I was making it hand over fist. Still in college, I had countless different businesses. I was starting to run a major corporation before I even graduated. But more important than any of that, while I was in college, that's when I met her, the love of my life, Saji. She's native to Africa, but came to America to study. I was, well, pretty screwed up when we first met. And for whatever the reason, she fell in love with me anyways. She had no idea that I was, well, rich. I kept my money to myself. I didn't waste it on expensive jewelry, fast cars. As far as anyone else could tell, I was living by the means, with barely a cent to my name. And for a long while, Saji was no different. And she loved me anyways. I eventually asked her to marry me. And as crazy as it is, she accepted. She was right there in my classes with me. She was a complete egghead. Brilliant, really. Getting dual masterates in particle physics and a number of other things. Eventually, once we got married and graduated, she came with me, and together we got to work at my companies. I had been designing things for a long time, even since before I graduated, patenting them, putting them on the market, anything to increase my overall net worth, which I spent large sums of trying to help the poor and downtrodden. My company spent more on charity than multi-billion-dollar corporations. Saji actually suggested that I was obsessed with it, with helping people, that I was spending way more time and effort doing it than anyone could really consider normal, that it was clearly an obsession. And when I asked her if that was a problem, she told me absolutely not. With all the obsessions in the world, if a person has to have one, she can't think of a better one than wanting to help people. And Saji decided to spend her life helping right along with me. We did countless things to help Blacklight City try to pull itself out of the muck. But it was a massive uphill battle. No matter how much I seemed to spend on the matter, or in what category or way I tried to invest in it, or even get others to invest, it all seemed to add up to nil. I created countless job opportunities in low-income areas, invested in programs that would help sustainable low-income families, donated massive amounts to creating crops specifically for feeding the homeless and low-income households. I even fairly employed people from starving nations on plantations meant to grow food that would support people within their regional area of Africa. But for all the work I was doing, none of it seemed to have the slightest effect on the dirt and grime that seemed to seep into every pore of Blacklight City. Blackout City was a cesspool, and nothing seemed to be able to fix it. No matter how much money I threw at the problem just seemed to throw it right back in my face. Finally, I hit what I thought was going to be it. The solution. A tool by which I could create enough wealth that I could resolve the problem once and for all. Between me and Saji, we developed a revolutionary generator. Basically, the generator uses two substances. One is an exceptionally rare sort of radioactive crystal. One that's so rare, in fact, that it cost me a large sum of my fortune just to buy it. The other was dark matter. Based on the work between me and Saji, we had deduced that by passing dark matter through this crystal that seemed to generate a strange radioactive signal, the rainbow colors it emitted were quite impressive to see, as well as its radiation signal. We found when introducing dark matter to it, we could produce amazing quantities of energy, even with just a particle of it. So, we created a full-scale generator, the first that this world had ever seen. It was going to revolutionize the production of energy, make sustainable, unlimited energy actually possible, light the world, and in doing so, save it. I could do more good with this one act than everything that I've done up to this point. We put the whole thing together in my private lab, the one that we had attached to our home. This one was just small scale, a test to ensure that we could make the process work. Stable. We were currently running through the checklist on our final test run. We had done all the preliminary work, and it was time for a full run-up to kick the machine into full drive for the first time. Once the process was activated, Sashi would have to hand activate specific segments of the generator, move everything into place, and then all we had to do was watch the energy flow. So, Marcus, how are you feeling? We are about to change the world after all, Saji said to me, with a bright smile on her face. It's not every day that you invent unlimited energy. What should be more happy about it? Well, I am. I'm just trying to make sure we get everything right, sweetheart. Come now, we've checked the numbers at least 100 times. It's done, Marcus. All we need now do is, well, turn it on. Am I sensing a little anxiousness? Perhaps you're feeling a bit verbose about helping create the first true unlimited power source. Well, of course. This is going to put both of us in the science books for life. I'm going to be on the cover of Times magazine. I've already picked a dress. And when we accept the Nobel, I will have officially achieved my life's goal. So of course I'm excited about it. As should you be, Marcus. I know, I replied. I'm just trying to, check my Q's and R's. They're checked, Marcus. Eventually, you're going to have to push the button, she said, smiling over to me as she took her position in front of the device, inserting her arms into the containment unit as they locked her into position. Now, it's time to press the button. I took a deep breath as I looked over to Sashi. What if it doesn't work? Nonsense, Marcus. It'll work. And if it doesn't, well, we'll try again. That's what we do, after all. Someone's got to care about the world. It might as well be us. And there's no time like the present. So, click away. Finally, I reached down and clicked the activation switch. As the device turned on, everything seemed to be running perfectly. As Saji began moving everything into position and locking it. Almost done. Now I just have to turn the crystal into position. And locked, Saji said with a smile as she stared through the containment screen. Energy reading stable, I said, looking at them carefully. Are there any adjustments needed? No, it looks like everything's running clear. The energy output is through the roof. I think we did it. It's working. Now all we need to do is sustain this level for 24 hours and the test will be officially done. We just created infinite energy. Congratulations, my beautiful bride, I said, looking over to her with a smile, as suddenly there was a power surge that went through the entire building. Suddenly, an influx started registering on the readouts as another surge went through the system. "Marcus, what is it?" Saji said, her arms still in the control locks. "Saji, take your hands out of there. We've got unstable readings. I'm shutting it down." "Well, okay." "Damn it," Saji said as she began to try to remove her arms, and the machine suddenly locked down. The loud popping sound of electrical circuits firing off, sounding as if they had been fried, and suddenly, Saji couldn't move her arms. They were locked in. "Marcus, I can't move." "What?" I replied frantically. "Don't worry, I'll shut it down," I exclaimed as I flipped the off switch, trying to end the energy sequence. After shutting it down, the energy levels should have stabilized. It should have went down to 0. But for some reason, the device is still producing. The output hasn't stopped. In fact, it's climbing. It's climbing radically, I exclaimed as I stared down at the controls, trying everything I could to shut it down. And it seemed like I was getting nowhere. "Marcus, what's going on?" Sashi exclaimed, seeming more terrified by the moment. Don't worry, I can shut this down. I can fix this," I said as my hands skittered across the keyboard rapidly, trying everything twice, and nothing. No matter what I did, no matter what controls I entered, no matter which one of the fail-safe, countless of which I put into place, I tried to activate, none of them stopped it. It just kept building. It was going to critical overload status, and there was absolutely nothing I could do to stop it. "Marcus, get out of here," Saji said, looking over to me, a tear starting to run down her eye, rolling off of her cheek. "This is going to blow. You have to get out." "Are you kidding me?" "Not gonna happen, Sashi. I am not leaving you here," I said as my eyes darted about the screen, looking for any way out, anything that could help me get her free. The case that she was locked into was basically bulletproof. Nothing was gonna break it. The clasps were too tight. Unless I cut her arms off, she wasn't going anywhere. And based on the way we set the device up, when it reaches overload status, the case will open. Everything in this room is going to be flooded with highly irradiated dark matter passed through that crystal. It'll be lethal. 100% lethal. I don't even know how that sort of radiation would affect a person. I was completely out of options as I stared at the screen. The only thing I wanted to do was get Sashi free, but it wasn't going to happen. As I looked over at her, knowing that this was gonna be it, I gripped my teeth as I ran over, slipping under one of her arms and standing in front of her, pressing my chest against the containment unit. As I flipped around to switch and press my back, looking Sashi in the eyes. "What are you doing, Marcus? Get out of here!" Sashi said, crying. "You're going to die. You're not stopping anything. The radiation will flood this room. It'll kill both of us if you stay. Then it kills both of us. But if it does, at least you're not going alone. I'm not gonna let that be the way things end. Not for you. We built this together. Every facet, every idea, every bolt and weld, every statistic, every test. If it's gonna kill one of us, then it's gonna take both of us with it. And that is non-negotiable," I said as I looked into her eyes, leaning in just one more time, giving my wife the last kiss that we'd ever have, as I heard the machine beginning to give, and I pressed my back against the container, hoping that it would form some kind of shield. As useless as it might be, if I can save her, it'll be worth it, I thought to myself as the machine went into overload status. The container burst open and waves of energy poured out, flooding the room in radiation, pouring across my back, flooding out in blinding arrays of rainbow light, mixed in with these little sparkles of dark, like tiny black voids mixed in with the rainbow light. My whole world became pain as everything went dark. And for a moment, that's all there was. Just dark. As suddenly I began to hear a voice, a very familiar one. It was Sashi. She was crying. Marcus, what happened to you? Where are you, Marcus? She exclaimed. I could hear her, but I couldn't see her. But still, her voice drew me. Before long, I began to feel as if I were getting closer to her. As I did, it almost felt as if I could see her memories, feel them, her whole life, flashing before my eyes. It was a strange sensation experiencing things from the other side, feeling the joy that she felt on the day that I proposed, on the day we got married. All the days that we spent together, they were all filled with joy, happiness, serenity. All the days that we spent toiling away behind desks together, she was happy as long as I was there. And as these memories crystallized up to the moment that I saw it through her eyes, the moment of the explosion, I saw myself from her point of view, dissipating into what looked like shadow, like my body was ceasing to be. All the while, streaks of rainbow energy and little black sparks flying into my form as I evaporated to nothing, until all I could hear was her crying out to me. Marcus, her voice said, as eventually I began to feel as if I were swimming in a pool, beginning to reach the surface, the light at the top, swimming as hard as I could, moving through it rapidly towards the light at the surface. As I broke through, my hands swooshed around, looking for purchase, finding that there seemed to be some. Like the pool that I was swimming out of had a very small size. In fact, so small it felt as if I could barely squeeze through it. Feeling the sides as I pulled myself out, it felt familiar. It was a tile floor, the same type that you usually have in any sort of lab. But as my vision began to clear and the world came into scope, the truth became evident to me. It wasn't a pool that I was crawling out of. It was a shadow, specifically Sashi's shadow. I was pulling myself out of her shadow, my body reasserting form out of nothing but blackness. As I crawled out, my regular body began to take its regular shape, the color returning to me as I struggled my way out, Sashi looking at me in terror and amazement, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. As I finally pulled myself all the way out of the shadow, rolling over to the floor beside it, and breathing deeply. Marcus, is that really you? Sashi said as she began to crawl over to me, reaching down and beginning to pat me, to feel as if I were real or not, eventually finding her way to my face and giving me a kiss. Oh my God, I thought I'd never see you again. Well, that makes two of us, I said, breathing heavily. I wasn't so sure I'd see me again either. Now, there's only one real question. What in the actual hell was that?